John pulled up to the curb exactly on time, his usual precision guiding the way he lived, even in things like picking up his wife. The city lights reflected off the windshield as the back door of his car opened, and for a split second, he assumed she would slide into the passenger seat like she always used to. But no. Sophia didn't even glance at him. Instead, she stepped into the back seat, laughing at something, her soft curls bouncing lightly against her beige cashmere coat. Sitting beside her, adjusting his tie with a clumsy eagerness, was Ryan, a junior assistant John barely remembered from the quarterly hiring wave. They both sank into the back as if he were their chauffeur. "Hey, can you turn the AC up a little?" Ryan said casually, before leaning into Sophia. "You were totally right about that vendor. I sent the email this morning." Sophia smiled, not the rehearsed smile she wore in public meetings, but the kind John used to think was reserved only for him. She didn't even acknowledge John with a nod. Not a word, not even eye contact. He stared at the rearview mirror in silence, watching her fingers brush a stray hair off Ryan's blazer like it was second nature. John's grip on the steering wheel tightened, his knuckles cracked. The engine purred softly beneath the awkward silence now sitting on his shoulders. He didn't say a word, neither did she. They were supposed to attend the shareholders' charity gala together. John had even arranged for the jade cufflinks she liked him wearing, but apparently Ryan had earned a seat beside her. "Nice car," Ryan muttered, looking around. "President Wong really lives the life, huh?" John's eyes didn't flicker, his voice didn't rise, but something inside him fractured with a clean, surgical snap. Sophia finally looked up, only because her phone call ended. Her gaze landed on John like he was part of the furniture. "We'll stop by the Hilton first," she said coolly. "I need to pick something up." He didn't reply. Ryan chuckled nervously. "President Wang, I hope it's not awkward that I joined. Miss Sophia thought it'd be good exposure for me to attend the gala, first time around such big names, you know?" John kept his eyes on the road. "Of course," he replied flatly. "Exposure is important." A silence fell, heavier than before. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. John's voice came low, even. "Ryan?" "Yes, sir?" "Get out of my car." Ryan blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I said," John repeated, turning to face him fully now. "Get out." Sophia's eyebrows shot up. "John, don't do this right now." John didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The coldness in his tone silenced her immediately. "I'm not your driver, and he's not my guest." Ryan looked to Sophia for help. She stared out the window, lips pressed thin. The moment stretched long enough to make Ryan swallow hard, then reach for the door handle with a shaky hand. He stepped out, face flushed with embarrassment, shoes crunching against the gravel. John looked at Sophia through the mirror. "You can stay or go with him, but either way, he's not getting back in." Her expression didn't change. She folded her arms and leaned back, like none of it bothered her, like he hadn't just made a public statement that shattered what little trust was left. John drove off without waiting for her answer. In that moment, it became clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a message. And he'd received it loud and clear. This marriage wasn't broken, it was already over. They met the way most powerful people do, at a boardroom table dressed as a dinner party. Contracts were passed around like wine, and behind every clink of glasses was another handshake to seal a merger. Sophia Liu was the daughter of the Liu Group's chairman, polished and impossibly poised. John was the only son of the Wang family empire. Everyone in that room already knew they'd be married before dessert arrived. The alliance was lucrative. Their families shared equal stakes in 3 subsidiaries, and with one engagement, the press framed it as the romantic fusion of legacy and leadership. In truth, it was neither. John remembered the moment he first saw her. She wore a silk cream dress that hugged her figure like it had been tailored by silence. She spoke little that night, but when she did, her voice didn't waver. She looked at him with a kind of distance that wasn't cold, it was deliberate, measured. When their engagement was announced, she didn't cry tears of joy, she didn't post filtered photos or write gushing captions. She said to him in a quiet hallway, "Let's at least make this look good." John respected that. He was a man who had learned young that emotions were expensive, in business, in bloodlines, in marriage. The only thing more dangerous than revealing how you felt was not knowing how the other person truly did. Sophia intrigued him because she never needed to be deciphered. She was upfront about being unavailable. And somehow, that honesty felt like the rarest intimacy of all. The first year of marriage was simple, cold, but simple. 2 bedrooms, shared calendar access, public events, dressed to perfection. They took turns arriving first to press conferences to avoid the rumors of distance, and yet, cracks formed, not the kind that split things apart, but the kind you notice only in stillness. One night, after an exhausting negotiation in Singapore, Joe had returned to the penthouse they shared. It was 2:17 a.m. The light in her room was on. When he peeked in, she was asleep but curled on the couch with her arms crossed tight across her chest, a barely touched glass of red wine on the side table. He covered her with a blanket and turned to leave, but her voice caught him off guard. "Don't leave." It was the first time she'd asked him for anything. They didn't speak. He just sat down beside her. In the quiet that followed, she unfolded slightly, resting her head against his shoulder. Her hand slipped into his, careful but intentional. "I didn't think it would feel this lonely," she whispered. That night, they shared a bed for the first time, and while it was nothing passionate or wild, there was something sacred in the way she allowed him close. When she buried her face into his chest, she wasn't his wife on paper, she was just a woman looking for shelter. After that, something changed, slowly, subtly. She began calling him husband in private. The word didn't sound playful, it sounded practiced, like she was trying to convince herself it belonged to her, and every time she said it, John felt something tighten in his chest. When his father was hospitalized for the first time, Sophia stayed up all night with him at the ICU. She didn't cry, but she squeezed his hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white. He remembered watching her stare at the heart monitor like she was memorizing each beat. "She needs control," John once told Deborah, the only woman in his life who knew how to listen without asking questions. "It's not that she doesn't feel, she just needs to be the one choosing when to feel it." Deborah had nodded, "And you're the only one she ever lets see when she forgets to choose." For a while, that felt like enough. But enough is a fragile thing when left unattended. Over time, the warmth faded. They returned to sleeping in different rooms, not out of tension, but out of habit. Her once shy husband became a polite John. They stopped touching. Even her apologies, when they came, were wrapped in politeness instead of regret. Still, he never raised his voice. John was known for his control, not just in meetings or headlines, but in how he never reacted emotionally. His competitors feared him because he never played the game on the surface. He knew how to wait, how to disappear into silence until it was time to strike. So when Sophia brought Ryan into their lives, John didn't panic. At first, Ryan had been hired as a junior marketing analyst, barely 24, fresh out of business school with a polished resume and an even shinier grin. He was eager, respectful, the type to knock twice and thank the assistant for every coffee refill. John noticed him because he didn't try to stand out, he tried to fit in, but then Sophia started mentioning him, at meetings, at dinner. "Ryan brought an interesting strategy today," or "Ryan suggested a vendor you might want to look into." John listened, nodded, said nothing. Then came the first time Ryan joined them for an event. Sophia had offered the explanation casually. "We need more young blood in these circles, let him see how the top floor breathes." John didn't object, but he remembered how Ryan looked at Sophia when she wasn't looking. It wasn't lust, it was something more dangerous, admiration, the kind that mutates when given attention. Still, he let it go. After all, John believed in lines, lines of power, lines of class, lines of silence that people like Ryan would never dare to cross. He underestimated just how far some Yoas, starved of status, would reach when they caught a scent of proximity. The car ride was the first rupture, Ryan getting in like he belonged, Sophia not blinking twice, John being demoted from husband to driver in a single shared glance. It wasn't the act, it was the message. That he could be ignored, that Ryan could occupy his wife's attention in public, and she wouldn't even notice how far things had slipped. It didn't matter whether she had feelings for Ryan, the point was that Ryan thought she might. And Sophia didn't care enough to prove him wrong. That night, after the car incident, John opened their wedding album. He wasn't sentimental, he didn't dwell on the past, but he looked at her in those photos, elegant, unreadable, the perfect bride. And he wondered if she had ever been reachable at all. He used to believe her silence was strength. Now he wondered if it was just distance dressed in discipline. He closed the album, stood from his desk, and called his legal counsel. They needed to begin preparing a full review of shared assets, quietly, thoroughly. The lines had been crossed, now it was time to draw new ones. The jade necklace had been custom-made, carved from a rare greenstone pulled from Myanmar, the edges smoothed by 100 hours of artisan polishing. John had selected the piece himself. He remembered the jeweler's words. It's traditional yet modern, something timeless, ideal for a woman with strength hidden beneath elegance. It was meant for Sophia. He never got the chance to give it to her personally. A scheduling conflict, a missed dinner, an out-of-town trip she took without telling him in advance. He left it with her assistant and said nothing. 3 days later, it appeared on Ryan's WeSync story. John had just wrapped up a meeting with external auditors when Deborah sent him the screenshot. No caption, just the image. Ryan's hand, slightly trembling, holding the pendant open in its velvet box. Underneath, the post read, "Forever grateful to the people who believe in me. Some things money can't buy, but mentorship can gift. Chat, thankful, hashed, next chapter nashta, rise. And grind." John stared at the screen for a full minute, then he closed it. He didn't speak of it at home, he didn't ask Sophia where the pendant went, he didn't even mention Ryan's name. But the following morning, every single employee at Liu Group's corporate HQ, excluding one, found a jade accessory on their desk. The men received hand-carved guanyin pendants, the women, soft-edged Buddhas wrapped in white gold clasps, all accompanied by a card in John's calligraphy. Hard work isn't silent, loyalty doesn't need hashtags. JWW. Deborah had arranged everything flawlessly. 42 gifts in total, everyone except Ryan. The office buzzed like a live wire, photos poured into the internal chat, statuses changed. A blessing from President Wang himself, respect. Jade speaks louder than likes. Guess I've been doing something right, thank you sir. Still didn't get one. Oof. The last one was followed by laughing emojis, clearly aimed at Ryan. By noon, Ryan's desk was nearly empty, no lunch delivery, no visitors. He kept his head down, he didn't post anything that day. Sophia called John around 6 p.m., her tone clipped, formal. Did you really spend that much on jewelry for the staff? John responded evenly. It was time they knew where loyalty is noticed. You excluded Ryan. He didn't deny it. I did. Silence. Then she added, he didn't mean anything by it, I gave him that pendant as a gesture, that's all. He waited a beat. You gave away something I chose for you. She didn't answer. He ended the call. The next day, Ryan appeared outside John's office. Deborah had tried to intercept him, but John waved her off. Let him in. Ryan stepped in cautiously, no usual cheer, no wide smile, just quiet anxiety beneath too much cologne. President Wang, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I wanted to apologize. John said nothing. Ryan rubbed his palms together. The post wasn't meant to disrespect you. Miss Liu gave me the pendant. I was just proud and stupid. I didn't realize how it would come off. You didn't realize, John repeated. Ryan looked down. Honestly, I didn't think you'd even see it. That's where you're wrong. Ryan looked up, startled. John leaned back in his chair. You're not invisible, Ryan. You've just mistaken access for authority. A ride in the back seat doesn't make you family. I never thought. You did. You thought exactly that. That's why you smiled in that photo like you'd won something. Ryan flinched. I admire her. I've never hidden that. And what do you think admiration earns you in this world? John asked. Ryan hesitated. I guess I hoped being seen might mean something. That pendant was never yours to wear, and admiration isn't a currency, not with me. Ryan lowered his eyes again. I'm sorry. John didn't reply, he simply turned to his computer. You can go now. Ryan left without another word. John sat there for a while, watching the cursor blink on an empty draft. Something coiled inside him, something too quiet to be anger, too deep to be hurt. It was clarity. He wasn't losing Sophia to love, he was losing her to negligence. And negligence was unforgivable when it came from someone who once told you they belonged to you. That night, he didn't come home. He stayed at the secondary residence, one of the luxury apartments they owned for international guests. No one knew he was there. He reviewed their finances, property ledgers, trust arrangements, slowly, thoroughly. The house they lived in, under joint trust, the penthouse in her name, acquired before marriage, safe. But the vehicles, the equity stakes, the art collections, they weren't protected, they were shared, and shareable was vulnerable. He wasn't looking for a lawyer, not yet, but the outline of separation had begun to form like smoke in a cold room. The next morning, a package was delivered to Ryan's desk. Small, black, anonymous, no note. Inside, the jade pendant, returned, untouched. And on Sophia's desk, later that afternoon, a single red envelope. It held nothing but a photograph, one she'd never seen. A photo of her. From behind. Taken during the gala. Her hand, resting on Ryan's shoulder. Her smile soft. And beneath it, John's handwriting. One of us stopped paying attention. The other started remembering everything. The whispers began at the autumn benefit gala, not loud, not direct, but precise enough to slip through crystal glass and jazz piano. John caught the glance of a board member across the room. The man's eyes flicked briefly to Sophia and Ryan before politely looking away. Ryan had arrived with Sophia again. No formal invitation, no mention in the seating plan. Yet there he was, standing a little too close to her as she laughed, dressed in the navy gown John had bought 2 years ago in Milan. That dress was meant for private dinners, not shared with interns and champagne flutes. John stood near the garden patio, drink in hand, posture relaxed. He didn't flinch when he heard a woman in passing murmur behind him, "Is that her new assistant, or something else?" The man beside her whispered back, "Well, he's always with her now, ever since the jade incident." They both laughed lightly. John didn't. He returned home alone that night, even though Sophia had left in the same car. He simply asked the driver to stop halfway and walked the last 4 blocks in silence. It wasn't about where he was going, it was about walking away on his own terms. That week, he called a private accountant, had him recategorize every overlapping financial asset. Deborah, his executive operations manager, watched the shift without a word, but she noticed everything. She always did. Deborah had been with the Wang family for 6 years, never once crossed a line, never once overspoke, but as she handed him the notarized paperwork, she paused. "Is this a restructure or an escape plan?" she asked quietly. John looked up from the page. "Both." She didn't ask again. A few days later, he came home early, something rare. The apartment was dimly lit. Sophia sat curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. On the table sat 2 champagne flutes and a half-opened portfolio. Ryan emerged from the hallway, looking a little too casual in a designer coat he couldn't have possibly afforded on his own salary. They both froze when they saw John. "I was just dropping off the final Q4 projections," Ryan said, clearing his throat. "Didn't know you'd be home already." Sophia stood. "I told him to wait so we could go over them. It's late, and the office is—" John held up a hand. "No explanations." Sophia's lips parted, but the words caught. Ryan awkwardly excused himself, collecting his coat and binder in a bundle. He bowed slightly before exiting, too fast. John didn't sit. Sophia sighed, stepping toward him. "You can stop glaring like that." "Like what?" "Like you've already decided what you want to believe." John's voice was quiet. "It's not about belief, it's about what I see. You saw me talking with a colleague. I saw you sharing champagne with someone you never even mentioned until 6 months ago." Her arms crossed tightly. "You think I'm cheating?" He didn't answer. "I'm not," she said sharply. "There is nothing between me and Ryan, nothing ever happened." John watched her, unmoved. His silence was sharper than accusation. She paced. "You want to hear me say it? Fine. He admires me, that's all. He looks up to me like a lost puppy. He reminds me of my brother." That stopped him. Sophia turned away from him. "My brother was 14 when he died. He was quiet, sensitive. He got bullied every day. No one helped him. No one stopped it. I wasn't even in the country when it happened." Her voice cracked. "He jumped off the roof of the school dormitory." John had never heard this story, not in 3 years of marriage. "I see the same exhaustion in Ryan's eyes sometimes," she continued. "That's why I can't just throw him aside like you want me to, because I know what it feels like when no one steps in. Do you think that excuses what you've been doing?" Her eyes snapped to his. What have I done, John? Treated a junior staff member like a human being, stopped him from being eaten alive by people like you? I gave him more mercy than he deserved. You gave him more attention than I ever expected from you. You want to control every room you're in, she said coldly, even the ones I'm standing in. You're my wife. And he's just a name on a payroll. But he wants to be more than that. She blinked, stunned. You think I don't know that? John stepped forward. Then why did you let it go this far? She flinched. He walked to the bar and poured a drink. He's playing you. She stared at him in disbelief. You really believe that, don't you? I've seen the way he looks at you. I've seen the posts, the comments, the subtweets. He's crafting a story. Sophia sat down, quietly. You think I'm naive. I think you're distracted. She looked away. Deborah came by the next day for scheduled reports. She noticed Sophia wasn't home, that John's tone had shifted, quieter than usual. She noticed his schedule now included meetings with inheritance lawyers and foreign banks. She said nothing. Later that week, Sophia confronted him again, this time after an internal company dinner. Ryan had been excluded from the guest list, and Sophia took note. I asked you to stop humiliating him. I didn't humiliate him, he just didn't get invited. You're turning this into a campaign. You're turning this into a scandal. The argument went nowhere, neither raised their voice. But the silence that followed was worse than any yelling could have been. John went to the guest room that night. He didn't close the door, but Sophia didn't come looking, and while she stayed out late the next evening with clients, John didn't ask who was there. The distance became ritual. Then came the message from an anonymous source, an HR staffer, a forwarded screenshot from Ryan's private account, now visible to only a few selected viewers, a post with a quote, "In some marriages, love is a business transaction, and some interns are tired of being invisible." Levels 2. This, John stared at the screen, no anger, just cold, calculating acknowledgement. Deborah found him in his office the next morning, reviewing investment paperwork. She opened her mouth to ask something, then closed it. I'm sorry, she said finally. He didn't ask what for. She added, quietly, I think you were the only thing keeping her from becoming just like everyone else. He looked up. Then I failed. She paused. You still have time to decide what failure means. John closed the folder in front of him. He already had. The Liu family dining room hadn't changed in years, same gold-edged porcelain, same antique mahogany table, same stiff atmosphere dressed in laughter. But this time, the air buzzed with something sharper. Sophia's mother had invited them both under the excuse of catching up before year-end. Of course, she also invited Ryan, who sat 2 seats away from Sophia like he belonged there. John arrived late, on purpose. He greeted Madame Liu with effortless charm, kissed her hand, and took the seat at the head of the table, opposite Sophia. She avoided his eyes. Ryan nodded awkwardly, clearly unsure whether he was supposed to speak or just smile. Madame Liu poured wine herself. It's been so long since the 3 of you were under one roof. I heard you came back from Shanghai, Ryan? Yes, ma'am, Ryan replied with practiced humility. I accompanied Miss Liu for a few meetings. Such a loyal assistant, she said, then looked toward John. You're lucky, Sophia. Not many men are as secure as John. He doesn't get jealous easily. John set down his wineglass slowly. Actually, Mom, I do have some news. Everyone turned, the soft clinking of cutlery paused. John smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm having a child. The silence stretched like a blade. Sophia blinked. What? He looked at her directly. I found out last week. It's a boy, healthy, confirmed. Madame Liu gasped, covering her mouth. That's wonderful, but when were you going to tell us? She looked to Sophia, confused. Wait, you didn't tell me? Sophia's voice cracked. Because I'm not pregnant. John took out a small envelope and placed it on the table, sliding it across. It's not her. The child's mother isn't Sophia. The table shattered in a single sentence. Ryan's face contorted, unsure whether to hide his shock or comfort Sophia. She looked at John like the world tilted under her feet. You're lying. I'm not, he said. The test was from a top OB/GYN professor. 10 weeks, strong heartbeat. Sophia's hands trembled. What are you doing? Announcing my heir, John replied coldly. Since everyone here seems so invested in Ryan's future, I thought I'd share mine. Ryan cleared his throat. President Wang, John held up a finger. Careful. I think maybe this isn't the right place. No, John interrupted. But it was the right place for you to slip into the back seat of my car, to attend private events uninvited, to wear cufflinks worth more than your salary while you flaunt access you didn't earn? Ryan turned red. I never flaunted. You posted a photo with my pendant, called my wife Mentor of the Year, and ended it with muscle emojis. You think I don't see through that? Sophia finally stood up. Stop it, John. He didn't flinch. You let him breach what we built. You opened a door I never expected you to, and now you're surprised that I walked out of it. I didn't cheat on you, she snapped, hands clenched. I didn't touch him. I didn't even... You let him imagine it was possible, John said. And you didn't stop him. That's worse. Her voice cracked again. So you slept with someone else? I chose someone else. She stared at him, furious. To hurt me? No, he said, to remind myself I could. Madame Liu looked between them, helpless. Please, stop, can we not do this at the table? Ryan stood. I think it's time John rose too. Sit down. Ryan froze. John leaned in just slightly. You know what you are, Ryan. You're the reason men like me protect what's ours so fiercely. Because for every 10 years we build something, there's always someone like you waiting to sneak in the back door. I never... You wanted her, John said, not loud, but cutting. And when she didn't push you away, you thought you had a chance. That's what envy does to weak men, makes them bold and pathetic. Sophia stepped between them. That's enough. He looked at her, really looked. I never wanted perfection, John said quietly, but I did want respect. You think I don't respect you? I think you forgot who we were. She breathed hard. What about the child? He'll be raised by my family, he'll carry my name, and he'll know what happens when you cross a line you swore never to cross. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. Why are you doing this? John leaned closer. Because when you let him take my seat, you stopped being my wife, and I stopped needing to protect what wasn't mine anymore. He turned, straightened his cuffs, and walked out without another word. Ryan sank into his chair, humiliated. Sophia stood still, trembling, hands shaking as if they didn't belong to her body. Madame Liu whispered, Sophia, is it true? Sophia couldn't answer. Outside, John exhaled as he stepped into the night. He wasn't angry, he wasn't broken. He was free. Ryan waited for John outside the corporate shareholders' summit. It wasn't an accident. He knew John would leave through the underground exit after the press cleared out. He had been there an hour early, pacing behind the luxury sedans, chewing on a toothpick like it could help him swallow his humiliation. When John appeared, flanked by 2 board members and Deborah walking behind him, Ryan stepped into his path. John, he said flatly. John didn't stop. His stride didn't break. Ryan blocked the door. John's eyes met his, unmoved. Say what you need to say, John said coolly. I think you've made your point, Ryan replied, voice sharp. You've made many, I'm just louder. You think humiliating me makes you powerful? No, John said. It just reminds people what happens when they reach above their level. Ryan stepped closer. You're not better than me. John smirked faintly. I didn't say I was. I just have more to lose, and more to defend. You had everything handed to you, your last name, your marriage, your son, and you still messed it all up. John's expression didn't change. Ryan scoffed. Sophia would have chosen me if we'd met as equals. That made John pause. He tilted his head. But you weren't equals. That's the problem. You never were. Ryan's hands curled into fists. She cared about me. No, John said slowly. She pitied you. Ryan's voice rose. She looked at me like a human being, not like a chess piece. You don't know how rare that is. No, John agreed. But I do know how dangerous it is when someone with nothing thinks attention is affection. Ryan snapped. You think your money makes you a man? John moved faster than expected. His palm cracked against Ryan's face with a clean, echoing smack. Ryan staggered backward, his cheek flushing red, eyes wide with rage and humiliation. John stepped in close, calm as ever. First of all, yes, being rich is a big deal. He leaned forward. Second, whatever piece of trash you think I am, at least I can give her a child. Ryan flinched. John's voice dropped to a whisper. Can you? Ryan didn't answer. His jaw tightened, his lips quivered. John turned to walk away, but Ryan shouted after him, voice breaking. She would have been better off without you. John didn't even glance back. She was better off when she remembered that. Deborah remained behind just long enough to stare at Ryan. Her look wasn't pity, it wasn't disgust, it was clarity. She's not in love with you, Deborah said softly. She's in love with what you represent when John disappoints her. Ryan swallowed. She needed a symbol, Deborah continued. And you needed an audience. You're not in love with her either, you're addicted to what she stands for. Power, prestige, access. Deborah's eyes narrowed. But obsession can't wear a wedding ring. She walked away, heels clicking against the polished marble. Sophia returned to the penthouse the next evening. Her hands were trembling as she keyed in the code, still the same one, though she wasn't sure if John had changed it already. The lock clicked open. She stepped inside. The house was empty, not a trace of him, not a single photo, not a single jacket in the closet. His favorite espresso cup gone. His cufflink box missing. The row of wine glasses cut in half. Even the housekeeper wasn't there. Only a sealed envelope on the kitchen counter. Sophia picked it up slowly. Her name was handwritten in black ink, as neat as always. Inside was a single document, property division, dated and signed, his assets accounted for, her ownership preserved, the separation, surgically clean. No note, no goodbye. Just a date circled at the bottom. The day their marriage would be legally dissolved. She sank onto the bar stool, the pages trembling in her hands. John had already planned it all, and he hadn't left in anger. He'd left with finality. Later that week, Deborah found her at the corporate lobby, sitting on the velvet bench near the orchid display. Her eyes were red, her posture was perfect. Sophia, Deborah said. Sophia looked up. He loved you, you know? Sophia nodded. But he stopped fighting when he realized you never protected him back. Sophia's voice cracked. I didn't cheat on him. I know. But I broke something. Deborah sat beside her. You let someone stand in a place that was never meant for anyone but him, and then you left him standing alone. Sophia covered her face. Deborah reached into her coat, took out a small card, and placed it on the seat beside her. Sophia lifted it. It was a single photo. Her, from a charity gala, back when things were still fixable. She was laughing at something Ryan had said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The timestamp read, 1 week before the jade pendant. On the back, in John's handwriting, love doesn't disappear, it just closes the door when you forget to knock. Sophia clutched the card like it could hold her together. But the door had already closed. And John wasn't waiting on the other side. The divorce was finalized in a conference room that smelled of leather, ink and quiet resignation. No media, no family, just 2 legal teams and a notary who barely made eye contact. John arrived 5 minutes early. Sophia walked in precisely on time, dressed in a white blouse so crisp it looked like armor. She didn't cry. Neither did he. They didn't speak. The last page was passed across the table. She signed it. He signed it. That was it. Sophia glanced down at her ring, still on her finger. For a moment, her thumb brushed over the metal as if she could smooth the past by polishing the surface. John noticed, but said nothing. He stood, buttoned his coat, and walked out. That was the last time they were ever in the same room without a third person present. John raised his son alone, not entirely alone. His mother insisted on taking the boy every weekend, fussing over vitamins and manners, calling him our little prince. They named him Luis. A name that sounded strong, international, untethered to either family's legacy, yet destined to create one of his own. Luis didn't know the full story. He only knew that his mother didn't live with them. She visited sometimes, on birthdays, holidays, whenever she gathered the courage, and John, to his credit, never stopped her. He just never welcomed her. Luis, in his toddler years, was oblivious. He called Sophia Mommy when she brought cake, called John Dad when he tucked him into bed. It broke her quietly every time. She started bringing toys, hand-picked clothes, handwritten storybooks with his name on every page. Luis would giggle and hug her legs, but by the time John walked into the room, he'd scamper away like the spell had been broken. Sophia lingered at the door after visits, eyes red, fingers fidgeting with keys she no longer had access to. Sometimes she asked to come in. John always stepped aside, but never looked at her when he did. They shared the space like ghosts, never arguing, never reminiscing, just existing in parallel for the boy, and then she'd leave. He never stopped her, but he never once asked her to stay. Ryan vanished. Quietly. Completely. The last rumor Deborah caught wind of placed him at a small offshore firm in a city no one could pronounce, no public-facing role, no LinkedIn updates. His last trace was a resignation letter left on the assistant's desk, one that ended with a single line. Tell her I'm sorry for thinking I could matter. He wasn't fired, he wasn't ruined. He was simply erased. The corporate world didn't want a man whose face was once slapped in a garage by one of Asia's most powerful heirs. John never remarried. He had offers, of course, daughters of old money, foreign heiresses, lawyers, models, diplomats. He took a few to dinner, for appearances. None made it past the third meeting. Luis grew up fast. He looked more like John every year, same jawline, same silence, same eyes that cut through people without needing to speak. Deborah stayed by John's side through it all. She managed the transitions, the trust funds, the legal buffers between him and the world. She watched Sophia come and go, her visits decreasing over time, her laughter dulling with every year. She also noticed how John stopped playing the piano, how the music room remained clean, untouched, how he read more but spoke less. Your silence is louder than your rage, she once told him. He didn't deny it. The last time Sophia visited, it was raining. Luis was 10, tall for his age, carrying a book in one hand and a sketchpad in the other. He hugged her like always, called her mom like always, then ran off like always. Sophia stood in the hallway longer than usual, watching him disappear down the corridor. John leaned on the doorway, dressed in black, one hand in his pocket. He didn't offer tea. Sophia finally turned to him. Do you ever think we could start over? She asked quietly. John didn't hesitate. Marriage was never the problem, he said. You were. Her breath hitched. He didn't soften. You never protected what we had. You defended him, then blamed me for taking it personally. I didn't think he was a threat. And that was your mistake. Sophia blinked away tears. I was scared, John. You were becoming someone I didn't recognize. I became what your silence forced me to. She looked down at the floor. I'm sorry. He looked at her for a long moment. His voice was almost kind. Almost. I didn't need your apologies. He turned, walking back into the house, the sound of his footsteps sharp against the hardwood. From behind the doorway, Luis called out, Dad? John answered without turning around. Coming, son? Sophia stood at the door, alone, soaked in the echo of a life she couldn't repair. The door closed, and stayed that way. I didn't need her apologies, I needed her absence.